time for the fight of your life. The time to focus on all of your worries and strife. If you fall to now, then you surely die. Time for you to join the angels and fly. Waves of darkness try to shut down your eyes. They overwhelm you with the hate of nothing but lies. Heed these words as your journey begins. With courage in your heart, it will be the key for you to win. Know that if you don't get stronger.
Hello and welcome back to Kingdom Reviews 0 EXP. I'm your host, Future Keybearer. KH2, the game that introduced the 0 EXP challenge to begin with. This was the first game in these challenge runs where I actually thought it was going to be fairly easy. I've brought this up before, but as a reminder, KH2 has a little feature called the bonus level ups. Basically, after almost every story-based fight, mainly bosses, Sora and the party gain some sort of bonuses, whether it be stat increases, item/accessory slots, and so on. Also, because this challenge had to be done on critical mode, I'll be starting off with a whole slew of fun abilities. Basically, by the end of the game, you'll be better equipped to handle the final boss than you were in any other game thus far. However, while I do expect this game to be easier, there are a few things that I still won't be doing. I'm just going for main story completion. While that does mean completing both visits to every world, including Atlantica and 100 Acre Wood, I will not be touching the secret stuff, including the extra Coliseum fights, the Mushroom 13, the Absent Silhouettes, the Cavern of Remembrance, and by extension the Garden of Assemblage, nor will I be dealing with the likes of Sephiroth or the Lingering Will. Getting started with the actual game, things actually did go pretty well for the most part. Fortunately, unlike KH1, there was no early game choice that would screw me over later on. Not to mention, most basic encounters became pretty simple with the acquisition of Chicken Little. While I understand why folks hate his movie, I have no idea why people hate this summon. As any decent level 1 runner will tell you, the Magnet spell is going to be your best friend for crowd control. Many people swear by Stitch as he can refill your MP bar for potentially limitless casting, but I personally found it a bit too infrequent to be reliable, not to mention that you don't get him until about halfway through the game. CL, on the other hand, basically gives you endless Magnesia, keeping enemies stunned indefinitely, and you get him after completing 2 of the first 3 Disney worlds. Basically, the only places where he's not useful are boss fights and battles where you can't use summons at all. One of these places is the Pride Lands, home to the Living Bones. These guys are already bad enough when I have decent stats. Dealing with them here was an absolute nightmare. Otherwise though, most of the game wasn't really that difficult. As always, some of the boss fights took a bit more effort than normal, but the only ones that were really bad for me were, oddly enough, the Experiment, and the World That Never Was bosses, starting with Roxas. Fortunately, however, because he was the worst, everyone else didn't seem so bad by comparison. Sad thing is, I can't even really tell you how I did them other than just playing slightly more carefully than I normally would. Also, Chicken Little trivializes the first chunk of the final battle. So that was Kingdom Hearts 2 0 EXP. At least for a while. See, I sorta told a lie before. Make no mistake, when I first decided to do this challenge, main story completion was my only goal. Then I saw a video by a YouTuber by the name of GameChamp3000. In their video on the subject, they mentioned a little cheese strat that could trivialize the Absent Silhouette fights. Basically, load up Sora's inventory with elixirs, use Donald's Flare Force limit, and as the final barrage of fireworks is going off, down one of your elixirs and wash, rinse, repeat. Funny thing is, I'm surprised I didn't think of this, considering that this strategy was more or less the key to me beating Lingering Will in my normal playthrough. Less funny was that it wasn't as simple as GameChamp made it out to be. They basically claimed that this strat would require little to no effort, but I didn't always find that the case. While I had no real issue doing this with Lexaeus and Larxene, Vexen was a bit trickier as Donald's rockets don't do a whole lot against his shield. But fortunately you can still use Keyblade strikes during the limit. Then there was Zexion and Marluxia. Zexion was a problem as I had trouble getting out of the unavoidable book world. Though, to be fair, it really only occurred to me to use Flare Force against Zexion himself, never inside the book, and the fight probably would have gone a lot smoother had I done the reverse. However, hindsight didn't reveal anything I could have done differently against Marluxia. Unlike the rest of the Absent Silhouettes, even with the max possible 8 elixirs, Marluxia's use of his own invincible attacks made it so that I never had enough to get through his whole health bar. What I ended up doing was basically get through his first 3 bars like normal, either guarding or reflecting his attacks, and utilizing reaction commands when possible. After that, I started spamming Flare Force until Marluxia started using one of two attacks. When using the spinning scythe move, I waited out the limit gauge until it was almost empty before activating the Megaduck Flare command to ride out the attack with invincibility. By the time Marluxia was done, he still got hit by quite a few rockets. Then came the Desperation move. After riding out invincibility as long as I could, I would glide around avoiding the Pillars of Darkness. Only once Marluxia threw his scythe, I would activate Flare Force again to avoid the final hit and deal more damage. It wasn't easy, but I did it. And with this new strategy in hand, I decided to take on the Cavern of Remembrance. I was able to either Flare Force or Chicken Little my way through the mandatory fights and ran past the rest. The final wave of nobodies was a pain, but using both strategies, I ended up winning the day. Feeling confident after that, and not really wanting to deal with the data fights, I decided, screw it, let's take on Sephiroth. Honestly, my strategy here wasn't any different from how I normally do it. After the reaction command, get in some damage with some ground combos, but only up to 2 finishers. Let him retaliate with slashing attacks, which you can block and counterattack. Wash, rinse, repeat until you deplete about 4.5 of his health bars. The reason you don't want to do more than 2 finishers is because any more than that and Sephiroth will teleport away before doing either an upward slash or more of his ground combo. Sephiroth is at his most dangerous when you can't see him, especially when you don't have the second chance and once more abilities. Once he gets into phase 2, however, forget about staying close to him. Get in 1.5 combos before hightailing it out of there. Unlike with phase 1, as far as I can tell, Sephiroth's attacks can't be predicted, much less manipulated. From there, just kinda be ready to block his sword attacks, reflect the Dark Orbs, jump up to him to stop Heartless Angel, and run from his fire pillars. Now I thought that was gonna be it, as to my knowledge there was no way to cheese the data fights or Lingering Will. And for the record, no, the Fenrir strategy doesn't work in level 1 because you can't get enough negative combo abilities. But once again, Game Champ's video supplied an answer. Unbeknownst to me, there was apparently a cheese strat where you summon Peter Pan, then wail on the boss with 2-hit air combos. The tricks here are surviving the first few attacks so you can summon Peter to begin with, then getting the timing down. With the exceptions of Vexen, Zaldin, and Xigbar, all the fights that allow summons can be done this way. Well, them endemics. While Peter can be used to basically skip most of the fight, you still have to deal with the dancing water. And I figured the best way to do so was to have my drive gauge at 9 so that I could start the fight with Wisdom form, do the bulk with Peter, then end the fight with Wisdom. Thus, I left the Garden of Assemblage to try the strat on good old Terra. In regards to surviving long enough to summon Peter, I really only found it doable if Terra opened the fight with this swooping attack. Ultimately, I was able to get it done, allowing Peter to finally even the score after losing to Terra 11 years ago. After going back to deal with Demix, I was able to cheese Axel by basically trapping him in this never-ending loop of Burst Frontier and Overtaker reactions and never hitting the clear light. Then I went for his best friend. After stealing Roxas's Keyblades, Trinity limit him while he's near a wall, then mash Air Slide to slowly whittle away his health bar. And I do mean slowly. While this was easy to pull off, it took a good 6 minutes of pure button mashing and my thumbs were ready to declare war on me. Sadly though, while Flare Force can be a good way to get some quick damage in the Zaldin and Xigbar fights, and the second half of Zevnis can be dealt with by abusing Riku's limit, the rest of the data battles can't really be cheesed. Mostly just get good at dodging and blocking. And that was my time with Kingdom Hearts 2 Zero EXP. When just going for story completion, I actually recommend this as your first Zero EXP run. It's fairly easy compared to what we've seen so far, while still being a damn good challenge. Though, be prepared for hell if you do more than that.